Today's textile industry is growing at an immense rate. The United States of America is the fourth largest exporter and the leader in research and development. A textile is any product made out of polymers. This includes our clothing, food containers, toothbrush, and almost everything humans use daily. Though the textiles industry creates many useful and life-saving products, its high demands cause manufacturing companies and processes to cut corners and harm the environment with the purpose of profit in mind.
Everybody loves a bargain, but at what cost? Behind the scenes of the textile industry, millions of workers work under unregulated conditions with only a pay of a few cents per hour. One of the worst industrial collapses of a garment factory happened on April 24, 2013 in Savar, Bangladesh. The Rana Plaza collapsed and killed approximately 3,639 employees due to low regulations.
Visible cracks were assessed by a local engineer who recommended Rana Plaza close until further assessments could be made, but the building's owner, Sall Rana, ignored the warnings and forced his employees to continue working the next day. Further investigation into the collapse revealed that the building was built on swampland filled with trash. Building materials were brittle, and the blueprint for the plaza did not pass regulations, but Sall used bribes to obtain permits allowing for construction. In addition to low safety regulations, employees work an average of 14 hours a day with a pay of $11.56 per week.
The family-owned company CNA is one of Europe's biggest fashion discounters. Most of the clothes are made in Bangladesh, India, or China. Dush Silva reports that seamstresses there work 14-hour days and earn around €30 a month on average. That's not a living wage, even in Bangladesh. If a shirt sells for €12, that doesn't leave much scope for profit margins.
The products have to be shipped all the way from Bangladesh, and people all along the textile chain want to make a profit. So they cut payments at the weakest point. That's the seamstresses who actually make the items.
In the end, it's up to the customer. Perhaps if they stop buying cheap textiles from Bangladesh, discount chains will rethink their business model.
But this is only one example of what happens all over the world.
Working conditions in some of those overseas factories are notoriously bad. And in this case, as Sean reported, warnings the building was unsafe were not heeded. All kinds of clothes, especially cheap ones, are made in factories like that. So how do we balance consumer demand for cheap clothes with the need to protect those foreign workers?
Canadian garment workers receive on the low end $9.75 an hour. China, the erstwhile king of cheap labor, pays 93 cents an hour. But there are a dozen countries with lower wages, none worse than Bangladesh, at a remarkable 21 cents an hour.
To test if this claim was true, we asked fellow classmates to take a simple random survey of their closet to see where most of their clothing products are made. Based on the survey, all countries but the US and Italy were less developed countries. China, Bangladesh, India, and Indonesia were the most frequent answers, with China being found at least once on everyone's survey.
It's sad to think that people only began to take notice of corruption when almost 4,000 people died.
If people buy ethically and they buy from companies that don't support child slaves or companies that know where their materials and stuff are coming from. My mom works for Charlotte Russe, which is against human trafficking and child slavery and stuff. They don't buy from places that use like cotton and stuff from child slaves.
Well, if I were in this situation, I feel like I would just continue working in a sweat house because I feel like I wouldn't know what else to do and I need to make the money for my family. A solution would be for countries like the US to stop outsourcing all of their textile development and production, because I know they outsource to a lot of countries in a lot of lesser developed countries because the labor is cheaper and they have less regulations. I mean, like right now I don't look at like where it's from or anything. I just look at like what I like, what style I like. But I think I would be interested in looking at things that are produced in more safer fashions, because I think it's important that people know like the conditions in which these clothing items are produced.
I prefer to look good and to be like healthy with my wallet. Like I don't want to shell out a bunch of cash for a couple pieces of clothing.
But can this all be the producer's fault? Consumers play a big role in the determining factor of how businesses are run.
So in certain cases, it's just big, greedy corporations that are using cheap labor so that their bottom line is better. And in that case, I think we as a consumer culture, in America, that's our place in the global marketplace, is we are the consumer driving force behind market trends. And so what we need to do is educate and advocate on behalf of some of these issues and against some of these large greedy corporations. And if we put pressure on them, then they will start to change some of their practices. But we have to also understand that that's only a small part of the fraction. Like Nike gets a bad rap because in the 90s, they found out they were making shoes for $2 in Thailand and paying people pennies, and that's wrong. Nike has enough money, but there's millions and billions of other shoes that aren't Nike that rely on cheap labor as well, and some of those are being sold for cheap. Like they don't have a huge bottom line like Nike, and so what can you do in that case? I mean, if poor people need shoes too, and if you use cheap labor to make those shoes so that they are cheap for poor people, then that makes sense.
Textile products are also life-saving. Items such as firefighter suits, implants, and bandages assist those who help save lives. Many say the solution is to stop outsourcing jobs or stop buying from these countries, but that does not solve the issue.
Industry experts caution that there is good reason not to abandon clothes made in Bangladesh.
I think the moral argument is don't end the purchase of Bangladeshi goods because it's going to harm the people over here. We want to improve their conditions. The only way we can improve their condition is to keep on buying and to put pressure on the suppliers and the buyers to improve the condition of these factories.
If the government does join an international coalition of retailers to reform the industry, as is now planned, then the factories of the future may look like this. A rare example: clean, safe.
There are also many misconceptions on how to solve the problem.
Definitely, my opinions of that have changed over time. It's something that we have done before, but it's something that we do, and I don't know if we would do it in the future, but there has to be a lot of careful consideration. I would never just bring a bunch of clothes just like for no reason and just like give them away. Sometimes Hoops Care will ask specifically for basketball shoes, soccer cleats, sports apparel, and we'll donate those to, if there's a specific need that we feel like can't be met, or if it can't be met with like great resources on their end, we'll try to meet it. But what ends up happening a lot of times, and I'll give you an example, I think it was called like the Million T-shirt campaign or something, the Million Shirt campaign. You can find it online, but it's this website. It has the 7 worst aid ideas ever, and the Million T-shirt campaign was this college student, I think, who had an idea of bringing clothes to Africa and giving them away, and he got not 1 million but hundreds of thousands of shirts donated, and then he was going to ship them over to Africa in crates, and he was going to help all the people because clothing is expensive, and instead of having to waste money on clothes, they could now send their kids to school. So it sounded like an awesome idea, except when he did it, and then you dump thousands and thousands of T-shirts into a small city or a community or a village, it completely undercuts the clothing industry that has been trying to get established there for decades or hundreds of years. And so now every single tailor is put out of business, every single seller, market woman, all of those people who rely, their entire income is on selling clothes or shoes, is put out of business. So then they go to find other work, right? And so they maybe, whatever money they had in their other business, they invest into a new business, and maybe their new business, who knows what it is, maybe it's, you know, selling bread, and then all of a sudden the shirts dry up, and, you know, 2 years later, everyone needs shirts again, because shirts don't last forever. Well, the entire industry of this village had been wiped out, and no one is in that industry anymore, and so now the village is 2 years later left with no shirts, no industry, and no jobs in that. So it's a really dangerous thing if you don't do it the right way, and we're totally against Project Wisdom. Is it's just going, you know, to a community and just saying, here. If anything, we would donate, you know, let's say you brought over like 200 pairs of shoes, and we would donate them to a shoe seller, a business, so that he could build up his business and support him that way. But I would never just dump shoes into a community with that.
This is a harsh reality for many developing countries to be able to increase their economic standing. Many forget that the U.S. was built on the textiles industry that used slavery.
Like, it's not as clear-cut as we like to think. In our culture, we put everything in a box, right? Slavery equals bad, and this equals good. But in other countries, when it's more of a reality, there are some unfortunate pros to it.
I think our government should put penalties on companies that don't try and reduce their footprint or something. And then if they do, they should get like tax breaks and stuff or some sort of benefit to encourage them to change it.
I mean, I think they just need to continue what they're doing, like instituting more regulations and like raising awareness. I think that'd be the next biggest step, like really, I don't know, maybe publicizing what's happening in lesser developed countries and how terrible the conditions are, because if the population were aware of this, I think there would be a much more likely chance that they will try to cause a change.
The textiles industry is an important economic sector that provides many benefits to users. Humans are not going to stop needing clothes anytime soon. So to increase businesses' transparency, awareness should be raised and consumers must change their behaviors to change that of the producers. The injustice of foreign garment factories are not a secret. It is an overlooked fact.